Hey everybody, Mike and Hannah here with Delta Faucet. Touch2O faucets with touchless technology are great. They're really convenient and easy to install, but that's for another video. Once you have one, you'll wonder how you ever live without it.
But like with any technology, issues can arise. Today we're going to talk you through some troubleshooting tips. Here's how to operate your Touch2O with Touchless Technology faucet. It's good to know that this faucet can operate just like a regular faucet does, where you use the handle to turn it on and off. That way, if you have a guest over who's unfamiliar with touch or touchless technology, they can still easily use the faucet. With both technologies, you do need to have the handle in the on position to use it. And you'll want to take note of what position the handle is in, because that is the water temperature setting that the faucet will be in the next time that you turn it on. Here's how to use touchless technology to turn your faucet on and off. You want to place your hand within 4 inches of the faucet to turn it on, and there's no specific sensor you need to place your hand in. And notice I said place and not wave, it's just a brief pause. And then to turn it off, you just place your hand right underneath. So we do find it to be most responsive if you place your hand right underneath this spout right here. It's just like that, it's just a brief pause. So to use the touch technology to turn your faucet on and off, it's a brief, deliberate tap, almost like tapping a key on your keyboard. So you can use your finger, you can use your wrist, you can use your elbow, and you can tap anywhere on the faucet. It's looking for your skin contact. The only place that it won't sense your skin contact is the wand here and this black base here at the bottom. You can also grab it, and it's very smart. It knows the difference between a grab and a touch. And you can also change the water temperature without it turning on and off. You can touch it anywhere on the spout. You can touch it here, you can touch it on the body, you can touch it on the handle, just like that. You can also use dishwashing gloves, and this works for both technologies. So if you're washing dishes and you have gloves on, it can still sense your touch or your presence. So all you have to do is use the palm of your hand or 4 fingers, and it'll turn on and off.
So here are some troubleshooting strategies you can use at home if you're having an issue with the functionality of your faucet. Now before we begin, I think it's really helpful if I give you a quick overview on how the science works behind the operation of your faucet, so you'll be keeping that in mind as we work through each of these steps. What we're looking for is making sure your faucet is sending a strong and clear signal to the solenoid that sits below your sink and controls the flow of water. We also want to make sure that solenoid has adequate power. Okay, so keep those in mind as we work through each of these troubleshooting steps. The first instance I want to talk about is if you're touching your faucet on and off, you see the indicator light coming on and off, and there's just no flow of water. First thing we want to check is to make sure that your faucet handle is in the on position. If it's in the on position, you're still not getting a flow of water. This may seem obvious, but just check underneath your sink as well to make sure the supply stops that come out of the wall are also in the on position. The next instance I want to run through is a situation where your faucet spout isn't very responsive. However, if you touch the handle or the body of your faucet down towards the top of your countertop here, you can still control the flow of water. Now, I just want to be clear when I'm talking about the spout, I'm talking about the top part of your faucet here, not the wand at the very end of the spout, because the wand isn't responsive to touch. What this is indicating is a weak signal being sent from the faucet to the solenoid underneath your sink. So we need to find the cause of the interference. Now again, the first things I like to check are all above the sink, making sure I don't have anything conductive around the faucet or coming into contact with that faucet that could be causing that interference and weakening that signal. If everything up here looks good, we're going to move underneath the sink to continue some troubleshooting steps. Here we are under the sink, ready to test the sensitivity of our solenoid by taking everything above the sink out of the equation. Now the first thing I want to do is go quick visual inspection of my sense wire and my sense clip, making sure they're both free and clear of anything conductive that could be causing the interference and look to be in good working order. Next, I'm going to touch the shank of my faucet at the bottom here to test to make sure that I can hear my solenoid turning on and off as it should be. If I'm still getting a little bit of a sensitivity issue, then I can remove my sense clip from my shank, let it kind of dangle free and clear of anything that could be causing an interference, and then touch the clip itself. Now at this point, if by touching the clip I'm getting my solenoid to function correctly, I know the issue is something related to the installation of my faucet. Maybe this shank is coming in contact with my countertop or something else conductive that's causing some interference. However, if by touching the clip the solenoid isn't functioning correctly, then I know the issue is with my solenoid and I may need to order a replacement. If your touchless faucet seems to have a little bit of a mind of its own where it's unintentionally turning on and off, there's a couple things we want to make sure we keep in mind. First, remember that your faucet is proximity based. So if it's turning on and off while you're working normally within the sink or around the faucet, it could be that your sensitivity is just turned up to too high of a setting. Now there is a way to adjust this sensitivity, and I'll show you how to do that in a separate video. Second, we also want to make sure that there's nothing interfering with the faucet itself. So something like a metal pan or an appliance cord or even some water that's just sitting along the deck around the faucet could be causing a false signal to be sent to the faucet, turning it on and off. So make sure that area is free and clear. And lastly, for a little bit of peace of mind, there is a safety feature equipped on your faucet that if the water does turn on inadvertently, it'll only run for 4 minutes before shutting itself off. If you need to revert your faucet back to manual operation only for any reason, here's 2 techniques you can use to bypass your solenoid. The first involves turning on your faucet either by tapping the faucet itself, tapping the shank of the faucet behind the sink, or even briefly pressing the battery cable. With the water running, we want to gently remove the cap to our battery pack. And if the water stays running, we've now successfully bypassed the solenoid, making it so the faucet can only be controlled by the handle on the faucet body itself. The second technique for bypassing the solenoid is to remove it from our system completely. So the first thing I want to do is make sure both my hot and cold water supplies coming out of my wall are in the off position, and then we can move on to removing the solenoid from our system. To start, I'm going to take off my blue retention clip on the bottom of my solenoid here, set it off to the side, and then gently pull down my sprayer hose off the bottom of the solenoid. With that disconnected, I can move up and remove my sense wire and sense clip off the shank of my faucet. And then also unplug my light cable off the side of my solenoid. Then I'm going to move up to this pivot clip on the top of my solenoid, clicking it to the side, and then pulling the entire solenoid off of my outlet tube. Now that I have that solenoid disconnected, I can take the end of my sprayer hose, bring it back up to the bottom of my outlet tube, pushing them together, and then taking that blue retention clip, sliding it on from the side until it snaps into place. And I think it's a good idea to give it just a little bit of a tug down to ensure a watertight connection. All right, now that I have that solenoid unit removed, I'm gonna leave it here in my cabinet for safekeeping, and then turn on my hot and cold water supplies that are coming out of my wall. Once that's done, I'm going to run some water through my faucet, then keep an eye on that connection that we just made between the sprayer hose and the outlet tube to verify that nothing's leaking. Once everything looks good, I'm going to use my towel for whatever light water cleanup I might have under here, and then that wraps up this fix.
If you're experiencing low flow, the first place to check is your sprayer wand. So we can pull it out and do a visual inspection of your sprayer face here. Use your fingers to clean it if you see any debris. Now we need to take our wand off, but before we do that, I want to point out that this hose has a weight on it underneath the sink. So you want to put a clip or a clamp here to make sure that the hose doesn't go back into the faucet. You can also tie it into a loose loop, which is what I'm going to do. So we're going to take our wand off by pressing this small button and unscrewing it. Just like that. We'll set that to the side. We're going to pull the hose down. Tie it in that loose loop. Okay, now if your wand looks clean and you're still experiencing low water pressure, then the issue is underneath the sink. If your wand looks dirty, we can do an inspection here. If there's debris in here, you want to take a towel, turn it upside down, tap it on the towel to get that debris out. And then you'll take the whole wand and you'll place it in a bowl of a 50-50 mix of water and vinegar for about 30 to 40 minutes. Then take it out and rinse it off. So I'm gonna turn this on to low pressure, give it a rinse. Set that aside. Now I'm gonna turn this on to full pressure and I'm gonna turn it to warm and let this run for about 10 seconds to get any debris that's in the hose line. All right. Now I'm going to unloop our hose here. Put our sprayer back on. I'm just gonna screw this until it clicks 2 to 3 times. Okay, now before I dock it again, I'm gonna turn the water on one last time and check for any leaks right here. Okay, that looks good. If you're still experiencing low flow, then your issue is underneath the sink. So we'll go there next.
So the first step in this fix is turning the supply stops for the hot and the cold water coming out of my wall, both to the off position. Next, I want to make sure that the handle of my faucet is on and in the full mix position, which is halfway between hot and cold, and that my touch faucet is currently toggled off as shown by the indicator light at the base of the faucet. Once those things are done, we're going to move on to removing our solenoid. To remove my solenoid, I'm going to start by removing the sense clip from the shank of my faucet and also unplugging my light wire from the side of the solenoid. Once that's done, I'm going to unclip this blue pivot clip on the top of the solenoid and then gently pull the solenoid off of my outlet tube. Now that we have that solenoid removed, I can move on to flushing my lines. So the first step is placing a bucket under the end of the outlet tube because that's where the water is going to be coming out from. Next, I want to make sure I hold the end of the outlet tube directing the water into the bucket and then slowly turn on both my hot and my cold supply stops to allow water to start running. I'm going to let the water run for say about 30 seconds to clear any debris that may be in the system, then turn those supply stops back off and pull my bucket back out and we'll be ready to move on to the next step. Now that we have those lines flushed, we can move on to checking our solenoid debris screen. So, the debris screen is located in the top of the solenoid in here. To get it out, we're going to be using some needle nose pliers, gently reaching in there to grab that middle tab of the screen itself. Once I have the screen removed, I want to make sure it's totally clear of any debris using a small toothbrush or something similar to make sure I'm cleaning the entire screen all the way around and then rinsing it out in some water. Once you're done, you can reinstall the screen the same way you took it out, placing it gently in the top here, and then seating it fully down with your pliers to the bottom of the solenoid. Once that's done, we can move on to reinstalling our solenoid onto the end of the outlet tube. All right, now that we've finished flushing our lines, I'm going to reinstall the solenoid, reverse order that I took it off. Start by connecting the solenoid to the outlet tube, gently pushing it up until it seats fully, and then swinging that pivot clip into position until it snaps into place. After that, I'm going to take my light cable, making sure it's free and clear of any obstructions, plugging it into the side of my solenoid until it clicks into place and has a good connection. Then finally, I'm going to take my sense wire, making sure it's not coming in contact with anything conductive that could cause some interference, clipping it onto the shank of my faucet, and then making sure that the tail of the clip is facing directly away from my sink. Now that we have that solenoid reinstalled, I think it's a good idea just to double check to make sure that all of my wires are free and clear and not wrapped around anything, and that my sprayer hose can move up and down freely as well. Once that's done, I'm going to turn on both my hot and cold water supply stops coming out of my wall, do any light water cleanup with my towel here, and that wraps up this fix. If you're experiencing a dripping faucet, here are a few troubleshooting strategies that may help you correct the issue. So, the first thing I want to talk about is defining what a drip is. A drip is not that little bit of water that comes out the end of the faucet when you shut it off. That's totally normal operation of your faucet. A faucet drip would be something that when the faucet's all the way off, it's going on for hours and hours and the water never really stops coming out the end of your faucet. Now there's two main sources that could be causing the drip. The first and more common would be from the solenoid that sits below your sink. The way I could tell it was the solenoid was by checking my faucet to see that when the drip is happening, that my faucet handle is in the on position, however my faucet is toggled off. And I can check that by making sure there's no indicator light at the bottom of my faucet here. Now the second and less common cause of the leak could be from the faucet cartridge itself located within the handle. And this would be the reverse state. My faucet would be dripping when the handle is off, but my faucet's toggled on, which I could tell by seeing the indicator light is on at the bottom of my faucet here. So first, let's talk about if you suspect your drip is coming from the solenoid itself. Now to correct this, we'd want to try to flush any debris that may be causing that drip within the solenoid. The first step we would do is to be pulling out our wand from our faucet here and removing it from our sprayer hose. To do this, I'm going to find the little button here, push it down, and then unscrew my wand from the hose itself. Now a little bit of a tip here is I want to make sure that I hold on to this hose and don't let it go, because there is a weight on the other end of the hose underneath the sink that's going to try to pull this back inside of the faucet body. So holding that and directing it into the sink, I'm now going to flush water through my faucet for about 10-second intervals, say 4 or 5 times, to see if I can clear that debris out of the solenoid. Okay, once I've done that, I'm going to reinstall my sprayer wand here, back on the end of my hose, carefully threading it on and then listening for a few clicks that it locks into place. Now the next step I want to check is to make sure that I've got a watertight connection between my sprayer hose and my wand, so just run some water through my faucet once more, checking for any leaks at the connection point between the wand and the sprayer hose. Okay, that all looks great, so at this point I want to double check to see if that solved my faucet drip. If it didn't, our next troubleshooting steps are going to happen down below the sink, so let's go check those out now. If you suspect that your dripping faucet is being caused by your solenoid, it's most likely because there's a piece of debris stuck in the diaphragm of the solenoid that's preventing it from closing fully and making a watertight seal. So to correct this, we're going to be flushing water through the solenoid itself underneath the sink without our sprayer hose attached to make sure we're getting the maximum flow possible, hopefully clearing that debris and solving your issue. So the first step to this fix is going to be shutting off both of our hot and cold water supplies coming out of the wall. Next, I also want to make sure that the handle of my faucet up on top of my sink is on and in the full mix position, which is halfway between hot and halfway between cold. I also want to make sure that my touch faucet is toggled off as shown by the indicator light at the base of the faucet. Once everything looks good, I'm going to remove the sprayer hose from the bottom of my solenoid by removing the blue clip, setting that off to the side, and then pulling the sprayer hose straight down off the bottom of the solenoid. Next, I'm going to take my bucket and place it under the bottom tail of the solenoid. Now, just so you know, the bottom of the solenoid here is where the water is going to be coming out. So I want to make sure I'm directing this into my bucket and then slowly turn on both my hot and cold supply stops, just in case I inadvertently toggled my faucet while I was working underneath the sink. Okay. Now that we have everything ready to go, I'm going to toggle my faucet on and off, say 3 or 4 times to allow water to flow through my faucet, out the bottom of the solenoid, and hopefully clearing that debris. So to toggle the faucet, I can either touch the faucet up above the sink. If I can reach it, I can touch the shank of the faucet back behind the sink, or I can also gently pinch and briefly pinch this battery cable here, allowing water to start flowing into my bucket. Okay, I've toggled my faucet off, so now I can actually check to see if that's corrected my issue if I see any water still flowing out the bottom of the solenoid. If I don't see any flow of water, I'm confident I've corrected my issue. So at this point, I'm going to turn off both my hot and cold supply stops again, remove my bucket, reattach my sprayer hose to the bottom of the solenoid, and then clip it into place with that blue clip. Okay, once I have that done, I'm going to turn on my hot and my cold supply stops coming out of the wall, use a towel to do any light water cleanup under here that might have splashed around, and that'll wrap up our fix.
Now I'm going to talk about the LED indicator light, its function, and some troubleshooting steps that you can take. So the first thing it tells you is when the faucet is on or off. It lights up when it's on and turns off when the faucet is turned off. It can also tell you the water temperature. It lights up solid blue when the water is cold, magenta when the water is warm, and solid red when the water is hot. Now it can also tell you when there is a low battery situation. When you touch the faucet on or when you touch it off, right when you do that, it'll flash red 3 times, telling you that you'll need to replace the battery within a few weeks or the faucet will stop working. Now, if the LED indicator light doesn't turn on at all when the faucet is touched, or say it lights up red when the water is cold, or it lights up blue when the water is hot, those are all issues that we'll need to address underneath the sink.
So the first step in diagnosing the issue that you're having with your LED indicator actually happens here underneath the sink. We first want to confirm that the light cable that comes from your faucet has a good connection with the solenoid itself. So just confirm that light cable is plugged fully into the side of the solenoid. If everything looks good and when the faucet's running you still aren't seeing the LED indicator on the bottom of your faucet, next we're going to move on to disconnecting that cable and then look into the side of the solenoid to see if I can see that indicator. Now, if I'm seeing the expected light coming out the side of the solenoid, then I know the issue lies within the light cable that runs to the faucet. However, if I'm seeing an unexpected light or I'm seeing no light at all, then I know the issue lies within my solenoid. Either way, I now know which replacement part I need to order. So to do this, I can reference the model number of my faucet against the correct parts diagram and order that replacement part. If you need any help with this, you can always reach out to the Delta Faucet customer service team. They'll be happy to help.
Now I'm going to talk about the LED indicator light and touchless technology. There are 3 modes this faucet can be in: high sensitivity, low sensitivity, and off. You'll want to refer to the user guide included in your box to figure out which sensitivity your faucet should be in. The sensitivity level depends on what type of material your sink is and what type of material your countertop is. Now, straight out of the box, the faucet is set in high sensitivity mode. Now, before we change anything, you want to make sure that your handle is set in the off position. Now, to change it to low sensitivity, we want to grab the base here for 6 seconds until it flashes purple. All right, that tells us that the faucet is now in low sensitivity mode. Now, if you want to turn it off, you'll grab it by the base again for 6 more seconds until it flashes red. Just like that. Now, to turn it back on to high sensitivity, we'll do the same thing. Grab it by the base, hold it for 6 seconds, and then we'll see it flash blue. All right, now it's set back to high sensitivity. We hope you found those tips helpful, and if you had an issue, we were able to resolve it.
And remember, if you have any additional questions, you can always reach out to the Delta Faucet customer service team. They're more than happy to help.